Working with time as a concept, it becomes very apparent that time needs a historical gaze to be perceived as the time we know it now, as past, present and future. It's very difficult talking about a Thursday a million years ago. That's an abstract format, and that's really interesting when it then comes to deep time. The impact that we are doing now happens so fast, but then also what are we a part of actually?
And how can looking at and reconnecting with deep time, can that help guide us into maybe different directions into the future? Can it maybe excite us? Can it maybe calm us? Can it maybe scare us? What can we learn from it? Last summer, we were invited by an art historian called Mikkel. He was invited onto a Norwegian scientific cruise where he wanted to basically observe artists and scientists working together to explore what kind of knowledge and experience can that intersection create.
Historically, artists have been on these types of cruises quite a long time with abilities to draw plants or draw animals. But this is in some ways a new way to work together because we're exploring as they're exploring as well. So we are not translating what they find into an aesthetic or visual representation, but are trying to conduct our own aesthetic research with them as well. Oh, there's a bunch of good stuff here.
Whoa.
Yeah, I still remember when we met very clearly because it was these two artists invited to join a scientific expedition. I have been at sea many times and I know what does it mean to be on a boat. And this boat particularly, because this is a big boat. There are a lot of decks, there are a lot of corridors, a lot of cabins and a lot of instruments and yeah, you get lost very easily. They were curious about what we were doing, so what the scientists were doing. And I was very curious to know what they were doing. And we met there. I think it was our curiosity and also the will to really discover something else. For example, I was showing them the plankton net. You can take samples of organisms from the water, and then I show them the instrument that I generally use, which is a gravity corer, which is a long cylinder of steel, and we use it to bring up the sediment from the seafloor. I'm interested in going back in time and see what has happened 10,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago, and so on. And they were interested to know how these sediments can tell me the history of our ocean.
We were lucky enough to get 217 centimeters worth of sediment back up, which Giuliana says dates back to 12,000 years. We were then able to divide that into 11 packages, which corresponded to different geological time. We found it so interesting that we could have come in contact with 12,000 years ago, the organic material, the life, the death, the decaying. Again, we still didn't know what we would do with it, but we packed it up and brought it back to Denmark. And then we had an exhibition coming up at a glass museum where it was also an open-ended research with the glass blowers. So one of the days we just told the glassblower, Chris, we said, well, we have this 12,000-year-old sediment. Maybe we'll dry it up, make it into some powder. Can you put it in the glass and see what happens?
What we are doing now here, we are basically trapping in the glass geological processes that is invisible to our eyes. This is something that occurs inside the magma chambers. So you are basically freezing in time geological processes which is impossible to see.
You're basically God, right?
Yes, you are. You have the planet in your hand.
We learned from the scientists that a lot of the sediment falling down is from the water column is organic material, also comprised of silicate. All of the algae or the shells, crustaceans, their shells are silicate, and silicate is the main component of glass. So is there a connection between the living species and a rock formation like glass? And are we connected as such as living to the geological time as well? That gave such an insight into the connection between the living and the soil that we come from.
This sample has not been dried, so it's still wet. Still have the bottom water. Still have the water from the ocean. And then what we did, we just put it in a sort of capsule, in a bubble. So the water basically evaporated, and then it was expanding, and yeah, we were very lucky because the glass didn't break. I even don't know how to explain it actually. I never saw this. Yeah. Physical processes for real, no. Encapsulating Arctic water in a glass bubble.
Right. That's what we've done there.
Sounds crazy. Yeah, it's really interesting. Now I'm going to bring some of those samples back in the lab. We are going to measure those samples, so we are going to understand which is the composition of this new material which has been created today. And I'm thinking how, for example, what we have done today can be repeated for scientific purposes, not for art, but for making scientific experiment to understand what is happening to this mineral.
We should try to understand if the minerals which we have used to prepare those glass cores have changed in composition, for example.
Okay.
So that's why we should do some scanning electron microscope today.
Yeah.
Giuliana's research is very interesting in exploring these life in extreme environments, which I think for us philosophically gives a really nice humbling to our own human perspective. To be able to come into contact with this kind of deep time is very interesting. If you put your arms out, the very edge of your the fingertips, your nails, that is human existence. So the planet has been around for a really long time. Species have evolved, species have gone through multiple extinctions, multiple climate changes. For us humans, it's maybe the first, and so that's why we don't know what to do.
Being inspired by the scientists and their research, we learned that facts and compartmentalizations or categories are arbitrary because everything spills into each other. Can we get to a full picture of what the world is through science, or do we need to also take care of the relationship to it to get that image or that connection to the natural world around us?
We really like working in the intersection between arts and science because learning about, through scientific knowledge, that we share more DNA, for example, across species, we can use that as a metaphor to maybe think differently, or the fact that mushrooms have 28,000 genders. We can maybe use that then in queer politics and queer theory to again question what is this obsession with thinking binaries and dichotomies and what is natural and what is normal. So for us, we really like working with the natural sciences to use that as metaphors for us to think philosophically.
This has changed the way in which I see the geological processes that I'm observing. I was used to see them like numbers to obtain. I think now I'm more sensible to what I'm observing. I think I will be more careful also in taking my samples, because every time that we take a sample, we destroy, we damage, we touch, we take away. When I see the Arctic seafloor, I see it differently. But, and I don't know why, maybe this is very stupid, but I look at it with more respect. I thought that what I was observing was an expression of geological processes, but now I see as an expression of some artistic processes also. This is something that has changed, and maybe there will be other things that I see different in the future. I don't know yet. I'm happy to discover it.